Our topic today, we're going to be covering
next generation architects.
So we decided to have this topic because we wanted to highlight what the next generation of architects can bring or influence
Our future.
future cities.
Actually, we wanted to pick the brains of the architects today and see what are their motives and what is it that they look forward to when they start working on their projects. And actually, more interestingly, how are they coping now during the pandemic and what are they doing moving forward? So, yeah.
So
good.
let's start introducing some of the people that are already here. So just when okay. So today we have the pleasure of being joined by some of the most promising young architects in the region. So
Well, we have Christian Salandanan and Kath Sapungay, who are the principal architects of Sangay Architects. Hi, thank you for joining us.
joining us.
So, Christian and Kath specialize in bamboo.
And Filipino architecture.
Yeah, so you might have heard of some of their projects, such as the MLR Polo Pavilion and Casa Bamboo.
So our other guest is Jeffrey Chie from WTA, and actually he has his new firm now, HV, or how do you say that, Jeff?
Yeah, just HV din studio.
HV.
Yeah.
So
Jeff was with us
at WTA.
at WTA up to about earlier this year, and we miss
Yeah.
you.
He's actually,
Yeah, I miss you all too.
He's actually in
I miss
Malaysia
you
right
all.
now. And another architect.
We have Aris Go and of 90 Design Studio. Hi, thank you for being here. A 90 Design Studio is a Baguio-based studio known for exploring form and with a portfolio of impressive works, including the G1 Lodge and UP Baguio Teatro Amianan. So we're looking forward to hearing more about your projects.
So other architects from WTA also, but have migrated to another country is Matt Begoghina and Audrey Lopez. Hi. So,
Hi there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So they are an architecture duo who constantly seek to explore our duty and role as architects in the future of our cities. They've worked on projects such as Outlets at Lipa, Omni Gardens while they were at WTA. So for our next guest is actually our mystery reactor, which wasn't announced in our Shelter Dialogues promotions, is Alexander Furunes. Sorry.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Can you introduce? Ayan. So, as to
Right, hi.
Hi. So
we're actually just waiting for Antonio to recharge. He's gonna be with us around 3 minutes more. So yeah, actually, you can update us, Alex. What have you been up to since you're not here in the Philippines anymore?
Oh, well, we're working on the Philippine Pavilion for Venice Biennale.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So there's currently
sure.
having a lot of problems with the visa and all.
Oh, well, I mean, it's difficult with Corona. Italy is in a lockdown right now. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But work has started, so we just need to get down there, me and Cesar.
Will you be going to Venice as well?
Yeah, we need to install. So that's what's happening for us at the moment. We need to get down there to build our exhibition. Yeah. I'm actually struggling a little bit with the sound, but I'm sure it's on my end.
All right.
when is the Venice Biennale?
It will be, I think, on May. They move it this May. Hopefully, if everything goes right, it will be on May 2021.
Is it going to be a physical event?
Yes, it will. It should.
It should.
It should.
because architecture is supposed to be experienced.
So Aris, are you in Baguio right now?
Yes, I'm here in
So you're
Baguio.
really big. Okay. How's your team? Are you all working from home there, or
We're everybody's back in the office.
back in their offices?
We started working back like since May.
Okay.
Yeah, we started early. We were following city's program.
That's good. That's good.
So, Jeffrey, can you share with us your new company and how you think it should grow?
Sorry, I can't hear you clearly. Can you repeat the question?
So, can you share with us what your ideas about your new company and
Okay.
what you're building right now?
Yeah, so right now we've got a few projects. So we are having a project, we're designing a market because right now since there's a pandemic, right? So we have to redesign the market, the circulation, everything based on the SOP because we have a standard in Malaysia itself to control the circulation of the people to minimize the interaction between the people. Yeah, so that's my current project right now.
Okay.
Congratulations on your
Congratulations on opening.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
New venture.
So, I want to ask Matt and Odd, how are you guys? And
How's Melbourne? How's Australia?
How's Melbourne? I heard you guys are you guys are professors now.
Assistant teachers. What is it, professors? Sounds so fancy. Melbourne's fine. We're actually sort of back to normal. Like I'm working back in the office 4 days a week with no mask. So that's pretty good. And Matthew is working from home at the moment. So he's still doing that before he's moving back to their new office.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I'm leading a studio of master students. Also, I'm doing online with students from 6 different countries. So yeah, it's actually nice to be able to do that at the moment.
How about
Christian and Kat.
Christian. Isan Salandanan. Hey.
what
how
are you guys
guys?
working on right
Yes, yes.
now?
Actually, we're in the office. It's the same setup with others. We went back earlier with office operations.
Oh, can you speak a bit louder? Sorry.
Okay. We went back to the office. We're actually in the office right now, and we went back also in terms of operations early. So everyone went back like in the office last year starting June. But it's all good so far, and everything's going well so far. Sorry, is my sound?
It's a bit soft.
It's a bit soft.
Soft.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll try to adjust with what I can.
Let's start now with the first question. Or
I do have a question for Christian and Kat.
Hello, is it better now?
That's better.
I have
Okay,
a
perfect.
quick question for you guys because I've been looking at your portfolio, and is it correct that most of your projects, if not all, are of bamboo, made of bamboo, or you use it
That's
bamboo?
right.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
And
actually most of our projects are made of bamboo, and it's actually the reason why we started our company, Sangay Architects. It's really to with the vision to elevate bamboo as a building material.
It's a really good material, and I'm like learning so much more about it now too.
what
That's
does
right.
sangay mean?
Okay, it's actually a wordplay of there's two meanings for it. First is it's a Filipino word for branch. We want our firm to, it's like a branch of architecture operate alternative construction using bamboo. And it's also actually a combination for the Salandana and Cebu.
Cool.
Okay.
I never knew sangay meant branch.
I did.
Oh, you do it? You did?
Yeah.
Branches.
I'm sorry.
A branch of government, but not a branch of the tree that's sangan naman. So
Ah.
it's a different term for branch.
Okay, I think Antonius is entering.
Okay, so we also have Antonius Richard joining us,
Almost.
almost joining us. I'll wait for him
To get settled
To get
with
settled.
his webcam. Okay. So we can talk more about
Okay.
Antonius.
He is based in Indonesia and is the founder of RAD-R, a design studio with a pursuit of provocative and experimental ways of design, while promoting sustainable architecture. So, welcome. Welcome, Antonius.
Welcome.
Antonius.
Glad to have you here. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, hi. Hello.
Hi.
Sorry for speaking. Our city is quite jam right here in Jakarta.
Okay.
Welcome.
How are you guys?
Doing great,
We're
doing
good.
great.
We're good.
Good.
Pleasure to have you here. Pleasure to have you.
So, just to reintroduce ourselves, in case you guys don't know who we are, I'm Burley, and this is Arvin, and this is Alexa. So, we can start with our first question.
Also, we also have William as a blind reactor
Oh,
Is he
with
here?
Alex. He's here. He's listening in his unit in his room,
okay.
and he's gonna ask questions later.
All right.
So actually, let's
Let's begin.
get it on. Yeah. So actually, we already submitted the questions for you guys to prepare familiarize yourself with. So we can start with what influenced your architectural practice and philosophy, and how do you aim to influence the next generation of architects? Maybe
Aris.
who
We
do you
can
want to
start with Aris.
Yes. I started practicing since 2004, and I started with very small houses and very small practice. I didn't work for anyone. I started from scratch. So, and when I started, my aim was actually just simply to do architecture, and there was really no philosophy. There was really no underlying intention to just doing. I just went out to do architecture. That was how I began. It was like I was young. I just wanted to do architecture, and that was it. And eventually, as the years went, then while doing practice, building at the same time, and after I went to Sydney for 3 years, and I went there, and then I decided to get out of the country because I was a bit frustrated from what's happening in our country at that time. But when I went out, I realized that it was. I realized that how much I valued our country, and that's where I realized, and I decided to come back and do practice back in not in Manila, not in the big cities, but in the small city of Baguio, where I am from. And my goal now is really just to simply do our practice and make a little difference in our city.
Yeah.
And our mission is just to help fix our city. That was our core mission when we started. It was just do something for our city, and that's why we do a lot of public projects. Some we even do for pro bono, and because of our goal, we wanted to create something different, something new, and something more fresh for our city.
It's very relevant to our theme this year.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Aris. I think Matt and Odd are ready to say something else about the first question.
Matthew?
Sure, I like how you send me the question. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, for sure, like I think as many of you will be able to relate, one thing that really influences us, is being, a person that travels. And, we live in different places, we come from, different culture. And, there's always a part of us that want to bring what we know, but at the same time, do our best to actually understand the place where we are in and try, to fit the best that we can, and to help the people the best we can also. And after, a lot of it, like, for example, I see with my students is trying to make them understand and, see, I guess, all the opportunities and capacities that there are in the world around us, and what can they do at every step, to be able to rethink the city we are in, or the different places, and see what kind of improvement we can bring in these different areas. So yeah, I think generally is really looking at what's around us and what is the best we can do to actually improve that, and see how the community can actually grow out of the different projects that we're building.
Thank you.
Can we have Christian and Kath?
Okay, I'll answer the first one. Well, what influenced our practice? Actually, it's one of the first things is architect Bobby Mendoza really played a big role in our firm, in the sense that
Sorry, before you continue, can you put the mic near your mouth?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the mic is on the other earphone.
Okay, I'll switch. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hello.
Thank you.
It's okay
Yeah,
now.
perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So in terms of the practice, we're actually highly influenced by architect Bobby Mendoza to start with, in a sense that when we saw his works using indigenous materials, we saw that it's possible to build such. And it was toned down with this specific natural material, which is bamboo, focusing on one material. And the thing that the reason why we want to focus there is because it's quite ironic how people think that we have a lot of bamboo here in the Philippines, and that we have a lot of supply and all. Yet we have very limited, very few to none developments made from this material. And that's what we want to actually push. We want to develop and explore the possibilities of this material in terms of architecture and construction. We want to push the limit of how Filipinos think, that in terms of the limitation of bamboo. When we say bamboo is not just temporary, it's not just bahay kubo. We want to actually show that it's possible to create permanent structures out of this natural beauty.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Oh, hi. Yeah, actually, I started my architecture practice with a community-based project. So when I was studying architecture, I already started to design like pavilion, houses, shelter for the unfortunate people. So I really like to work in a workshop and then working with my own hands. So I can like from zero to until it's finished. I learned a lot from the construction itself, also the designer. So before that, because I think what's really important actually is you should go to the community to see what they really need. So it will give you like a quicker, he'll give you a fair good idea of what kind of building or program do they need. So and also when after I graduated, I joined the WTA following architect William P. So his design philosophy is about social architecture. So he really influenced me a lot. And then when I come back to Malaysia, I wanted to start with something small, which is community-based. So I really encourage the young generation of architects go to the community itself and blending in with their life, because like me, when I go to Philippines, I never been to Philippines, so it's my first time, and I'm trying to live with all the awesome Filipino, learn about their culture. So also when we design the emergency quarantine facility, you can really see the people like what they really need, what they really desire, and then we should design something that gives them a sense of belongings, and then also help to build a sense of community, bring all the people closer together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Antonius.
Just repeating the question, what influenced your architecture practice and philosophy? And how do you aim to influence the next generation of architects? Antonius?
Well, I guess people tend to underestimate the power of one person, but then, tend to underestimate the power of influence from one person, but then like overestimate what we can do as our government can do. The thing is, we started our practice 3 years ago before we are practicing in Boha Architects, and then we realized that actually Indonesia, as I share with many panelists around here in developing country, that actually our situation is quite unique. Our situation is quite unique in which sustainable architecture is a luxury. It's not a necessity, but then it's still a choice. It's not a necessity. Therefore, what we're trying to practice is how can we demonstrate that actually sustainable architecture is achievable, especially in developing countries such as Indonesia or probably many of Asian countries right here. And in order to achieve that, how can we get creative? And then from that, we are hoping that even starting from this first project until the big one, and inspired, actually everybody can sustainable projects, and doesn't necessarily be very costly projects, but actually it can get started from daily spaces. Basically what we're trying to influence people is actually sustainable architecture doesn't be costly, but we just gotta be creative, and most important of all, that we have to have the needs to understand that actually sustainable architecture is a necessity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing, all of you. Thank you for sharing with us what influenced you guys. And it's glad to know that you guys are very passionate about contributing to our communities, also having a voice for your materials, your what do you call this? Philosophies
For the students
for
as well.
your respective fields. So, our next question.
Our next question is, so, okay, from your view, what current trends are starting now, which you think can be a big part of the future of architecture? I think we can start with Christian and Kath, because I think it's bamboo.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of current trends that we observe, it's actually with the shift of material selection that people now are shifting their choices to a more environmentally conscious alternative materials. This actually reflects from small items to construction to buildings. When I mean small items, say, you see now in the product, in the market, that a lot of bamboo products are emerging, say from small chopping boards to other cases which are made of bamboo, and up to larger buildings from development from resorts that are now selecting bamboo as a building material, since with this generation, one thing that I appreciate is they're now conscious about the materials, the carbon footprint for the construction that they'll be developing. And it's actually a pretty good trend, because in the future we'll be expecting more developments and more buildings, more structures to be built with using alternative materials with bamboo, with the help of technology. I think that's one edge, I think, of technology infusion with alternative materials. We can now do a lot more with these raw materials, and it can be converted, say, cross-laminated lumber, cross-laminated bamboo. So the limitations are then pushed forward, pushed more with the help of, with the intervention of these technologies. And I think it will really play a big role in the future of architecture.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Aris?
Yeah. In relation to what Christian said, it's more now, the trend now on my side, we've started using timber since I started my practice. We've been using timber in all of our projects since 2004. And at that time, it wasn't, it was here, especially in our country, it's been like a difficult climb for us to gain acceptance for timber. And now that, in the past few years, we've seen that sort of, in a way, resurgence in the interest of people when it comes to using timber, especially now after the pandemic, where you have this general interest in well-being and all that. Interest in using timber has increased. We've also found a lot of, in the current interest that people have started, having this interest in building and using with timber. And I think also in the current internationally, the use of timber, cross-laminated timber, and CLTs, and then cross-laminated, etc., laminated veneer lumber, LVLs, have increased in usage, and then because for one, with climate change and sustainability, timber will play a very important role. So, I don't see that going away from now. And I think this is one trend that we are seeing as well. If you take a look at your Instagram feed, at least one of them will be something related to timber. If you're following like several architectural things, and you'll see at least one of them will be of timber. So this is, I think, one trend that I think that here in Baguio, especially because of our weather, it has been very difficult to gain acceptance. But recently, when we say timber, everybody's just like saying yes, yes, yes. But before, it has been very difficult for us to gain that acceptance.
That's good. At least now people are going back to timber.
Yeah.
Can we ask Alex? Can we ask Alex? So you, I know you're a blind reactor. Let us know. What about you? What trends do you see in architecture now?
Especially the Venice Biennale Pavilion. It's mostly made of wood.
Well, I think what's interesting with both Kat, Christian, and Aris talking about the change of material or choice of material in construction, whether it being bamboo or wood. I think it's really important to see what is the kind of materials that we can actually build from that fits within the lifestyle of those that use it, because using bamboo is a lifestyle. You need to, any building you build, nothing is permanent. No building is permanent at all. I mean, in Norway, where we build a lot with wood, it requires maintenance and it needs to be maintained at a regular interval. I think our building, which is about 100 years old now, requires maintenance every 10 years. So I think whatever material that you choose and end up working with, it requires also a change of mindset and attitude amongst people within the country that you work, so that the choice of material becomes natural to the way of life of the people that use it. But I think the general awareness of sustainability, choice of materials, in terms of how we build, interest in trying to build in more sustainable ways, that's increasing amongst people. But to, like Antonius was saying also, this idea of sustainability being a luxury rather than that being actually a necessity. But I think very quickly we'll all realize that this is really a necessity, and we do need to find ways to build that are sustainable both socially, but also environmentally, politically, on every level. And finding that balance is a process of negotiation. I think what you're seeing in the Venice Biennale with the question of how will we live together is a lot of really fascinating, interesting contributions that are dealing with that kind of negotiation. Because I think there is an agreement that we need to improve things. It's just a question of how we do it, I think. And then I think all of you have a really interesting, also Audrey and Matt, you're talking about this, and Iris also, you were also talking about students and the way that we're passing on knowledge. Jeffrey was also talking about passing on the idea of how you work to younger architects, going into communities, looking at what opportunities are around you. And I think that is part of building that shared consciousness of what it means to build today, when we have these conflicts and these issues and these challenges that we need to address. So this is all, I think, fascinating, because it's kind of touching on the same conflict that we're seeing in the Biennale, or these questions that we're facing in the Biennale, both us as Pavilion, for the Philippine Pavilion, but also for other pavilions that we're in dialogue with. Yeah. I hope my sound is okay.
It's
perfect.
It's great, it's perfect.
So let's hear from Jeffrey. What do you think are the trends that are showing up?
For me, I would think it would be in a bigger scale, because compare the current coronavirus pandemic with previous crises that have impacted cities, which lead to improvement in building standard, I think also health-driven architecture. And I also believe that sustainable buildings could become mainstream. So, and also this pandemic actually could speed up the adoption of more sustainable buildings and transport. But we are not just talking about sustainable in buildings, but also sustainable in lifestyle. So, for example, for transport, actually the current trend right now is towards electric vehicles, which will continue, as well as the rise of using e-bike or scooters. In Manila, they are already starting providing bicycle lane, which promoting people using without much interaction, but then they can just go somewhere nearby. So the planning for the city is really important. For example, like a mixed-use city, you don't need to travel really fast to get what you need. Yeah, and also the cumulative of all of this trend, the effect will be transforming a city center, and also the local neighborhood, making them more cleaner, quieter, safer, also healthier. So make it more walkable and bikeable. Actually, is making is providing people in the city more providing them to interact more between human itself. And if the city is planned properly, I think the car parking, which eating up so much space of our city, could be obsolete. And also, I believe that farming could make a return to a city. So we are trying to make a self-sustained city. And also, the mindset of the people right now actually is slowly changing. They're starting to learn how to live with others not just people, but also with nature and environment. Yeah.
I like that you said that people are starting to
Change
live
their
with
mindset.
others.
Even
also.
change their mindset.
Yeah. Okay, so let's ask Antonius.
Yeah. And I think Matt and Odd are ready after Antonius.
Okay.
First of all, I would like to apologize for the background noise, because my office were integrated with workshops, so therefore there are so much noise around. It was a very interesting question, but that's a tough one. And then I'm quite jealous with many panelists who are here, like Mr. Arit and Kat and Mishan, who has found their craft already in the process of doing architecture, because there's a rare thing to do, and it's a gift really. The thing is, talking about trend, it's a very dangerous word to use, because that's what differentiates like architecture with any other designs. And in architecture, although what Alex was saying that actually nothing is permanent, it's quite true. But compared to any other designs out there, architecture is quite a manifesto. Sometimes if it was done right, it has to be done right, should last for centuries, right? By saying that means that any trend that we're using or we're adopting right now will leave some footprint for years to come. And therefore, answering that question will be very hard, especially for me in Indonesia, in which we are the biggest archipelago country in the world. Means some material in certain area will be inaccessible from another area, even though it's the same country. And having said 150 million people are using a different material according to its context, I think it's quite romantic, and we're trying not to, because architect is the influencer, we are the designer of spaces, and we're trying not to impact something that we haven't really studied the craft on, and how it will respond with carbon footprint per se. But it might not be a pleasant answer, but I might answer you this. The trend will be whatever China will produce for the next 5 years.
Oh no!
Because no, it's true, because for years we have been struggling how to create a sustainable buildings. What's the problem? Because China hasn't started to go there. Yeah, and then like this year they already built everything, so they have started initiate the green project. So whatever, sustainability is hard because it was not mass produced. Now, if China is producing everything in a sustainable manner and approach, means everything will become way cheaper. And whether you like it or not, architecture is product of capitalism. It's true. I know it's hard pill to swallow, but it's true. So whatever China is producing, I'm trying not to be skeptical and see how can we adopt these things and probably mix and match in whatever resources we have. Because architecture, let's not try to be cocky. Architecture is not the inventor. We are more like a organizer, organized stuff, right? Some of us are quite talented enough to craft our own materials, but as far as we are processing right now in 2021, I'm hoping that we can finally be able to say, like concrete, for sure. Concrete, are you saying that concrete is a trend? No, it's not a trend, but most of your building using concrete, so the definition of trend itself is quite questionable. What I'm trying to say is actually, I'm kind of hoping that actually there will be some materials. For example, like some people in Indonesia is trying to create a structure from fungus. I found it quite interesting because fungus is one of the largest wasted byproduct in Indonesia. That kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure yet about the trend, but I hope I have my answer for the trend itself, because trend is a dangerous word.
All right, thank you, Antonius,
Thank you.
for that amazing answer. And I think Matt and Odd agrees a lot with what you said, and they have their own perspective on it.
I think just going back to what Antonio said, we realize now how the trends in sustainability are also very political in that aspect. But Matt and I were thinking like one of the trends that is really important. Again, it would be about sustainability, but a triple bottom approach on sustainability when we start to think on the environmental aspect, the economic aspect, and social aspect of sustainability. Because for it to work, it's not just the materials; it's also the change in culture, the change in thinking. How do you build community is also important. So, like in the works, we see this in the works of Alexander Furunes in Leyte in Tacloban, and of course, the economic aspect of it. So why sourcing local materials is as important in building the sustainability attitude in the community. And Matt, you want to add more on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, kind of like everyone was saying, architecture is currently moving back to its roots. And I think the most important word or thing that I see coming back is the idea of connection. And the idea of connection to your community, connection to your land by the use of materials and other things. And so you can see that basically the way we're thinking about projects now, and I think that shifted a lot compared to the start of the previous century, was to look more beyond the building itself and think of architecture really into the impact that it can have on the inhabitants and the impact it can have on the community, and basically how we can bring more meaning into the places that we're building. So it's less about the building itself and more about how people will use it and how we become a part of the city it's in. And yeah, I think generally this idea of meaning is really, really important, because we talk about the idea of temporality, and as Antonius said, I think that like all buildings are not are temporary, and everything will basically disappear over time. So there is a part of buildings that have meanings to the inhabitants, and the building will stay. It can be revamped, it can change totally, but the whole spirit of the building will still be there. And this is beyond just the architectural work. This is really what was the impact of the work into the community.
Yeah, I think it was Alex who said that. But basically, the point of now that we know also that our cities are basically overbuilt, we start to learn how to we make this building adapt to the future uses. So we start to look inside again and think that maybe our building shouldn't just be a mono-use kind of building. Same way as we think of our city, shouldn't just be a residential zone. We should start thinking that should be as mixed use as we see our streets in Manila, right?
That's true. And if you think on how, I think it might be a question for after, but on how COVID affected population, we saw here in Australia, and I'm sure it was similar in the Philippines and other countries. It was people going back to where they used to live, going back to their family, and this idea of as soon as you get the chance, what really matters to you is actually not the city you were in, but the roots and connection that you had with other people. And so I think that really is something that we need to think about and develop more in future projects.
Yeah, I do agree also that there is a trend that goes beyond architecture right now, similar to our Pritzker winner, that never demolish, right? Is that correct? Yeah. And why? Will wants to say something?
Hey guys, Matt, Audrey, Jeff, Alex, how are the penguins there in Venice? No, so I was just like thinking about all your experiences, all you guys working in different places in different countries. I mean, of course, we're discussing trends and all that, but and also we're just talking about community and what are the core things that transcends the difference.
Yeah, hard to catch what you're saying. Can you?
Sorry.
Is the
Hello, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. So
Wait.
yeah, I was kind of like asking, what do you think are the core values, in architecture that transcends the differences in terms of like the different cultures that you work in and the different places that you've been to, and like what translates from one place. For example, Matt, in the different places you've been in, Alex, working in the Philippines, what have you brought back? What are the core things, that you think is shared by all?
Sure. I mean, I think obviously the core values might just sound, like overheard by just connection we have with other people. Just when I moved in the Philippines and when I moved in different countries, first you arrive Italy as a foreigner, and after a while when you start to learn more about about the population, learn more about the culture and everything, and you start to really be a part of that. And I'm pretty sure Alex would feel the same, and probably Jeffrey also, like on how suddenly you come from an outsider to someone that is, part, I feel Filipino in many ways, even though I'm so far to actually be one. But I think this is what really transcends any culture and every place. It's this idea that we basically want to be with other people. We want to share, we want to live in a community, and so how do we build this community after end up being the more specific one that need to be a bit different depending on the place. But I think if you come always with the same idea and mindset into what are the shared value of this place, and what can you build on top of that, to improve it or to actually open it more to other people. This is always something that would lead to, I think, a successful project.
Does
Alex,
anyone-
what you wanted to say, if you had something to add.
Yeah, and Iris maybe, or Alex, yeah.
You want to go, Iris, or Chris? Or I could say, I think what strikes me is that, when working in different cultures, that, how similar we are, even despite we come from different nations, that nation state is a construct also, but in reality, we're pretty similar. And, my experience with Philippines started with Tacloban in Samar Leyte region. And, experiencing the concept of bayanihan and how similar that was to my tradition of dugnad in Norway has kind of created, it has directed my whole understanding of how we work through our ways of working through architecture. And actually it's the way that I'm now directing my whole practice, because I'm realizing that actually in any culture or society that I work with, there will be traditions and practices very similar to that have been means and ways of building throughout history. That is non-market-based, that is non-neoliberal, that predates the kind of modern project. So, as humans, we are so similar, despite nations, that actually there's so much that we can do together, especially now with the kind of climate crisis, the social conflicts, and pandemic and everything. You really need to start looking at how can we work together in this kind of distribution of vaccines. There's so much so that we're not. You need to stop looking at the separation and start finding ways of building on something together. I think that's what's interesting me at the moment in that regard. Yeah.
Okay. So
I think Aris can say something about it as well.
Yeah. When I was in Australia, I wanted to practice. I didn't work in an architectural firm. I worked as a laborer in construction, because I wanted to see what's on the ground, not what's on the drawing board mostly. So I worked as a laborer, carried stuff, and tried to see how different we are, or how similar we are in terms of what's on the ground. So I think that the differences with like us here in the Philippines and like there, the places I've seen, is that we're more intuitive. Filipinos tend to be more intuitive rather than rational, and we tend to be more touchy-feely, and we more artistic in a way, and you might call our tendency to be more random and bahala na, something like that. And it's very different from what I've seen there, and that kind of discipline we don't have. We don't have on the ground. That's why our buildings, our structures look this way. Even we want it to be in a way a little bit more perfect or more refined. It's very difficult to achieve that kind of refinement, that Norwegian refinement, that we can't find it here. We can't do it here. It's sort of, in a way, it has been, having worked for several years in like a little bit of construction, and like it's been a challenge. And eventually when I came back, my realization was not to change what we are, but just to simply embrace it, embrace imperfection, embrace mistakes on site. So that's why some of our buildings, when our workers make mistakes, we just allow it. We just redraw it based on what the mistakes were done on site. And sometimes they can be nothing detrimental. Imperfection for me is part of the work. And in the Philippines, there's a lot of imperfection.
I think imperfections are very human, right? I mean, that's what makes everything human. But you know, going into that, I think like for example, Kat and Christian, you guys work with bamboo, and Anton, you know, with the materials you use also. Like, I think maybe you can share some things about that and like, you know, how the craftsmanship, you know, contributes to the architecture.
Yeah, how your experience with imperfection as well.
Yeah, how it contributes actually to the architecture, and even Jeff, you know, your experiences working with the locals, you know, with the workers on site for the quarantine facilities. Yeah. I'm sure, of course, Alex with the community workers.
Well, in terms of the workers, it's actually, I must agree with Aris, it's really a challenge here in the Philippines, especially seeing how the different workers from another country works as well with the same craft. But what we learned actually is that we have a unique craftsmanship here in the Philippines that is actually, it's different. Yes, it may be imperfect, but it makes it human, it makes it Filipino, and it gives it character. So yeah, that's it's actually a Filipino thing that we have embodied from the discipline, from the lifestyle that we have, that actually reflects in how we work and how our works look like.
I'd like to add up on that info. In terms of working with local workers, those imperfections are actually quite beautiful in the sense that they become part of the process, part of the building, part of the story. That in the end, there is a learning curve with this building, but they learned a lot. You see the progress from the workers involved. They started with minimal knowledge with working with bamboo and ending up being proud that, wow, we did this building. We're part of the process. We're part of the construction of that structure. And that thing is, I think that is beautiful with the process and the story of the building.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the other way around actually, because since they usually have their own way of doing things, that sometimes we push something that is global, for example, or something that we saw abroad, and then they will push something that is actually theirs, and then we as architects actually learn it, and then we apply it next to our design. So it's actually more of a collaboration now with the workers and with us as architects. So it's actually two ways.
Relation.
So it's collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, for it to be human, you actually also have to see your culture in it, right? And it's also in the way you build these structures or use your material or apply your material. It makes it very human.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay, well.
Antonius?
Just to add on that.
All right.
Yes.
Matt and Audrey first.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I think when you look here in Australia, our building sites are basically governed by all regulations, and since really what drive everything, anyone can have an accident, and who's liable and everything like that. And so, this makes I think the building's even more detached from the community. Like, in the exact opposite for me, there's an amazing building from Alex, like in Tacloban, where, the community builds themselves. They build. I can still remember when he was telling the story of the kids drawing the windows and the parents actually building the windows that the kids drew. And like for me, this brings a whole different level of significance within the building rather than any type of construction that we can have nowadays.
Yeah, so basically you're bringing the sense of ownership to the people towards this building, so that makes it, in the long run, a more sustainable approach to building because you have that social ties to the buildings that you're building. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it brings a pride. I can imagine that Christian and Kat and the building that you're doing in bamboo, probably brings a lot of pride to the workers also because they're doing something that is so different and still amazing at the same time. So I feel like this is also bringing this relationship to the community.
Okay.
So Alex, do you think you'll be able to do that back in your country? Like you have that community thing, yeah? Or
we're doing it at the moment. We have two projects, one finishing now, which is a community center. I think this idea of perfection, imperfection. I mean, we are as imperfect here as in, there's no perfection in Norway. I'm just saying. There's also, we're fundamentally human, everyone. So it's just that how can we actually create conditions when we work so that actually the people that also are part of making it also are part of, I like that what you said, Kath, that it's a two-way thing, because it really is, and I think very often we as architects, we design problems into buildings that actually needs to be solved by the real people that are actually going to build it. So now how do you create the conditions where the people that work and construct it, but also people that use it, the ones that will actually live with it, are part of actually creating the condition for how the building is being created. So, and how do you create a safe place for everyone that is part of building that building to do that? So it's safe for the laborers, so the building itself will be sustainable over time, they will be standing there. How do you weave all these things together, I think is the intricacy of a process like this, which I find fascinating. How do you create a two-way dialogue with the workers that you work with? How do you create pride in the choices that they make but how do you also lift knowledge from being just the way that we normally do it to actually doing something more than just the way that we normally do it? So there's it's complicated, but it's really, really interesting. I think this aspect, that negotiation and how you do that negotiation between the architect and other people, that's fascinating. And the material is the way of communicating also sometimes. I think that the bamboo, for example, talking to people in Vietnam when we were working there, Wat Trong Ni are working with bamboo, but also talking to the people that work for Wat Trong Ni. The knowledge is in the workers also, and mostly, how do you actually make sure that is also elevated, so that it's clear that it's not just the architect doing architecture, it's actually, we are part of a process with a lot of more people. And it's where the dynamics really work, where people can communicate with each other and make things together that it really works. And that's what we should be, those are the moments we should be lifting up as like a successful architectural project, I think. Where these dialogues are actually working, where the people are actually, and I see that, in the points that were both raised by Matt and, Kath, and yeah.
Let's hear from Antonius.
I guess going back to the question of what is the shared value in architecture to all the panelists, very interesting from what all the panelists has collected. By the end of the day, eventually it will lead up to this, right? Architects has to take a stance. Was it proactive or was it reactive? Right? So basically, for me, whatever Kat and Christian doing was like something not everybody can do, because you really has to apply participatory design, right? So basically, it's not only you are the initiator. Basically, this is it, but then by the end of the day, whoever might be more capable or, you guys know more than me, it's great, it's like proactive, we initiate some stuff, right? But then by the end of the day, we cannot neglect that actually architecture at some parts also is very reactive. It means we were paid as a profession to deliver something that is supposed to be perfect, right? Or whatever that means. We just
we said this to the client that actually, you know what, it's an ugly mess, perfect imperfection, that kind of shit. I'm not paying you to do imperfection, So it's basically, by the way, it's where were we practicing? For example, like us in developing country or in Southeast Asia, perhaps that actually the process of doing the construction is part of doing the architecture. So it's not only the planning, it's constructing, and also how did we use it, right? But in most of the developed country, I don't know, Alex, you probably can jump on this, but like sometimes the construction process is a means to achieve architecture. There is not much, drama involved, which is good, but at some point we lose a bit of touch of craftsmanship from people that crafts it. So I guess by the end of the day, it backs to architecture as an art of optimizing spaces, and where the culture sits in is really going back to the context of what culture really is. Culture is basically, by the end of the day, it lasts because it was convenience and people love to maintain it, and then therefore architecture was there to really accommodate what was people like really, and then how can we make that even better by any process and any means necessary, though participatory design or sometimes top-down works too. Sometimes people don't know what they want, and then you gotta tell them what they probably needs. It's going back to our profession as a consultant. We are consulting things, So shared values is actually, I found it, architects really improve life, and that was where culture and means of doing it. I guess that's what's make us special.
Thank you.
Let's hear from Jeff.
Hi. So for me, I'm going to talk about the EQF. So when you see the EQF, we have been building 75 EQF, right? But when you look really into it, it's not all exactly the same, because we have so many different workers, different teams. Actually, they have their own different working method. So how do we share the value, like common value, is by bringing him into discussion, because they are more experienced. We are learning while working. So we learn from them and then they learn from us. So we are having a discussion. So they are also part of the team. So by doing that, they also feel that they also will know that which one is the fastest way to do it, which one is the easiest way to finish it. Because what we did for the EQF actually is a speed and have to do it fast. So I remember when I with Arvin and architect William T doing the 120 beds in PNP. There's so many teams. There's more than 100 of workers. There's 8 different teams. So you can see there's 8 different working methods. And then it's more like a competition, and then we learn from each other. Yeah, and then we take the strength, the strong part, the strength of each team, and then adapt it. Yeah, I think this is what we need to have to let the workers know, because they are not just here to build. Actually, they are building for the community. They should be part of the team. Yeah, they should be proud of them. And then when they try to take a picture of them, they prefer to take it like a silhouette. They prefer to be like a hero without a name or something. They just want to build for themselves and build for the community. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so let's move on to our third question. So going back to what Aris said a while ago, like seeing more wood in our social media, how is social media changing how we do architecture, or is it actually influencing our designs? So maybe we can start with Antonius this time.
This topic has been discussed in many perspectives and many talks, yes. But then, most discussion leads up to how globalization enrich our point of views. From learning into processing, because there are too many information out there, etc., etc. Another discussion discussed that actually social media and digital life change the way we do practice. How do we get business and such, because we are able to reach out to so many people and so many lives out there. But when this discussion came, for me personally, what I really realized actually what internet really has done to us is increase the inflation of design. So what we I really felt that actually inflation is not only happening in economic, it's also happening in design. Like imagine some well-named architect that you might admire when you were a student, right? When they did what they did, you realize like, wow, that was like amazing, like there's like so life-changing. But you know what happened? Nowadays, another people doing same complexity or probably doing about the same cool design, and you're like, okay, it will just make few minutes of Arts Daily cover page, and then it was just gone. Because nowadays people are able to see so many things and able to practice with so many materials and so many technology. The design itself inflate, so invaluation in design. So for example, like I remember, I will give you this example because he will be speaking like So Fujimoto houses in Japan, right? Back then, in that years, when he did what he did, people was like, like blow their freaking mind. And then like, what happened if nowadays practice we're doing about the same complexity as that or that kind of approach? People like, oh man, it's like it's easy, and it's not cool anymore. It's crazy and it's kind of scary of how fast the maturity of architects and how fast we can adapt with so many. For example, like here in this discussion, I probably about 10 architects or 12 architects in the room, right? By having this conversation, I probably will learn a lot of Aris, Alex, Kevin Christian, Jeff, and Audrey projects. And then from there on, I was like, no way, that's still good. It will raise my, my level of design. I'll try to compete with them with my next project. So what really social media did to us is increasing the maturity of design so fast, create inflation of design. So that's what I really like to say, because like your design might be cool now, but in the next 10 years, it will just be a common practice. It's like the way we do practice. That's how you should do it. So it's interesting, but I really like to see what will happen in the next few years.
Yes. Isan, you want to share something? Kat?
I must agree with Antonius. Actually, it's really overwhelming. Social media, how social media is right now. But for us, there's actually two things. It's awareness and being globally competitive. Awareness in a sense that because since bamboo architecture takes a lot of research, so a lot of travels and learning. So social media actually makes us aware that okay, there's actually that we can that technology that we can apply, or that learning that we can actually apply. So also awareness in a sense that since we're currently just developing bamboo architecture in our firm and we're currently just making tests, we always want to share what we're doing, and it's a lot of it's a lot in terms of the responses of people, how a lot of people are actually quite interested in what we're doing and how it pushes other people to do bamboo as well. So it's social media really affects us a lot in terms of that. And then now it's being globally competitive. It's really, Antonius, I really agree that it's really overwhelming that every few seconds there's a new Art Daily or Architizer topic that is, oh my gosh, there's that very, very new topic, or there's this new technology or this new innovation in architecture that we don't know what to apply, or it's happening too fast. But in a good way, it's actually nice to be to do something and be globally competitive. It's like for us, social media is like being on a conference table and then sharing, okay, this is what we offer, and then just hearing like other people in the panel or other people in the table to sharing theirs as well. That actually affects us all in a good way. So, Kristen, do you want?
Please feel free to just jump in if you want to share. But let's hear it from.
I think Odd and Matt have a different perspective since Matt doesn't have a social media account.
Yeah, I was about to say.
This is very different. But like, oh, I don't want an Instagram. No, don't force me.
So Matt is insulated from all of these things, right?
He will be the black sheep in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing here.
But I think first I will just trail on to what Antonius and Kat is saying about how social media enabled a lot of these things, a lot of this tacit knowledge being shared among designers, to be like technically made design very accessible. And I think the idea of social media being that third place, being the place where people can gather, is something that also enabled even users to know and get to know about what is good design. So beside the architects and the designers who are learning about what are different technologies there is, users are also people are becoming more aware of what do they deserve in their living spaces, or what do they deserve in their communities. They should have actually community spaces. They realize that. And same with the pandemic, and basically highlighting the importance of public space. And that's something that people started to realize, that public space is critical in making cities work, because you want those kind of spaces to be accessible from your houses, from your communities, because you want to be able to breathe, because you need that distancing that you can only get in those kind of spaces. But going back to Matthew's point of view about social media, Matt, do you want to share?
Sure. I mean, of course, I will never disagree to what all of you shared. Like it has all this enabler or enabling power, for all of us. In my end, I see mostly social media as a hindrance, and mostly, as an overload. It's something that just shows people everything, and I think it makes people less think about what they want, but more like, look, oh, I want this image or this image or this image, without thinking of what are the real or deeper thing that, they actually need and that they should have or they should think about. And I think, this creates, all this type of buildings and cities that are copycat of others, that are, not related to their context, just because people actually want to have, something that they saw on Instagram the other day. And so I think, not that, of course, if you want to use it, go ahead. But I think, you should just have this layer of more understanding or reflecting into, what are the things that you really want and what do they actually bring to you. And, in this case, it could be something really useful in many ways. In my case, I will keep on being in my cave. I will leave you all with your phone and everything else. Because I think, in the end, you might just miss the point. And I think, just being out and just talking to people in the street, people that might not use social media, people that might, just be everywhere, and, just creating this conversation with everyone, because in a way, social media is not everyone. It's just, mostly the new generation, even though, they are still.
We're the new generation.
Am I?
So I think just adding up to what Matthew is saying is we start to lose that level of discernment when it comes to the design that we like. And I guess he's also speaking from his experience with a client who would just bring up anything he finds in Pinterest and then tells him to basically do that, that is also where the problem with social media lies. So there is, of course, the positives and the negatives of social media for design.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's just like we need to not lose this relationship with context and relationship with people. And I think it's easily forgotten. Not that it cannot be brought with social media, but it's just something that, you need to spend time. And, this is what most people do not do. They just do something, they like it, they want the same thing, and that's it. And so, we just need to figure out a way for this to be actually more useful and see, not just how can I bring this here, but, what are the things that work in this project and how can I bring that in here? I think would be more relevant.
And if I may, it's quite interesting, what you're saying. But don't you realize there might be some random kids in the corner of Indonesia who waiting for to get inspired by your project, You see? So of course there will be another downside, and I really hate the client that bring interest to you and I just ignore them, leave them. It's an elimination process, right? But that's a really good point, really. But then perhaps we should also sit with something. Will this go away? I don't think so, because COVID accelerates the internet and then digital process so fast. So I guess how can we adapt and look the positive out of it? Because every changes will bring disturbance, that's for sure. But then looking at the other way around, because your project can inspire so many people out there, and then whether or not they can apply it, probably some ladies in Indonesia bring your project Richard, I want to do it this way, I might get offended, probably I might, but then look at the bright side, because now everybody has equal chance to be able to see architecture as a necessity. Isn't that a good thing generally, because then it will bring up the point of probably this is a good, interesting topic to discuss later on with another panelist. But I would like to say inclusivity. Inclusive is good, right? Perhaps internet brought architecture from its high horse, from its exclusivity into something that might be able to be accessed with everybody, although it might not be in the right context. Otherwise, everybody will be an architect, right? That's maybe where our place is to educate client and nurture. Actually, you know what? I think what you need is better to be prepared this way, that way. So I don't know. This is a good discussion. I would like to think your projects might inspire a lot of people out there, So if you just decided Jesus came out of the cave, people are wow. I don't know, it might, you never know, it might be changers for some kid studying architecture out somewhere.
I mean,
here about the
I think the main
backlash.
point was, sorry, Will, go ahead.
Yeah. No. There's a question here about the backlash of social media, especially in terms of particularly Matt's aversion to social media is that social media tends to portray an idealized version of things, right? And we get all these things about. That's why we have this backlash against fake news and all that. And I think it also leads back to the discussion earlier about how architecture. Antonius was saying clients don't embrace imperfection. And I think social media has this kind of way of trying to make us believe that everything should be perfect. And so now that we're all trapped with the pandemic and all that, and the state of travel as it is right now, and maybe looking at the next generation of architects, how people are not, how they might be growing up with less travel, in their lives. And I remember Alex telling me about these imaginary penguins before. So what kind of idealized, how does it affect, architecture in the future? This idealized version of architecture that you just see on photos with trees on the buildings.
Sure. I mean, just firstly to answer Antonio's and also to answer you, Will. Again, I'm not rejecting all the advantage part, and I know that, this is not part that are really interesting me, but also, why we're a team here is because, I bring my set of skill and knowledge, and Audrey brings her set of skills and knowledge, and, she likes more social media than I do, and, I like to be in my cave and, design thing, and, this is when we clash together, that suddenly, we get more amazing project or more things going on. And just Antonius, you were talking about, the fact it was more inclusive, but, in a way it's also exclusive, right? It's exclusive to all people that do not have social media, or people, that might be in country where it's banned. Like per se, it's just inclusive to people that are using it. So, it wouldn't be inclusive of myself in a way. So, it's just always, this kind of balance that we have to find. Of course, it's great that, people can find and discover different things that are happening around the world, and, it's great that, so many amazing projects are discovered and wouldn't be otherwise. But, I think us as architects, we just need to be careful into how we're using these tools into our designs, and how we want to shape the future. Basically, I think are things that are really important to think about. And of course, as Will was saying, this idealized version, and I don't think it's easy to get away from that. But we really need also to get to the next level and to start thinking of that. Like earlier, we were talking about the process of buildings. And, building doesn't stop the moment it's built, right? It's when actually it starts, and allowing people to actually not just use a building, but really appropriate the spaces or make it their own is also something that we need to think about. And so this is something that all these pictures also make you forget is that there are people really living in there and doing things in this area. It's really important to develop.
Hear from Aris.
Yeah,
What are your
with regards to what William has said about imperfection and perfection in architecture, in how we display architecture, I think that's a very good important point. That sometimes we like to show our perfection, and we'd like to show, especially in the renderings for social media, we post, because renderings tend to be really close to very perfect, perhaps too perfect, and sometimes people have that expectation of perfection from social media, and because the photographs are shot in such a way that they're perfect. That's why in our social media feeds, we tend to not put renderings. We tend to prefer more mundane things. We just post a lot of construction. We post a lot of plants. We post a lot of weird stuff. And because we think architecture is not just it's when we display architecture in that perfect kind of way, it makes our jobs harder, because we pick that expectation. So sometimes we're very reluctant in presenting renderings, but because clients expect this kind of rendering, they tell me, I want the client shows me this kind of rendering, and then they say they want this kind of rendering. Can you do this? We said yes, we can do that, but we're not sure if your building will come out that way, exactly the way you like it. So it's a big tension, that because this is because of social media. But the good thing about social media is that it becomes rarely is simply a place anymore. Sometimes places becomes are a result of the merging of physical and virtual, because when they see from social media that this place is nice, they have that initial conception of a place already. Before even getting to that place, they have that architecture, in a way, and a perception of the place before they even go to that place. So if the perception is very good already within in the virtual world, I don't know how that social media affects that, but I'm sure there's some sort of an effect, between the interface between that two. And I think we as designers of buildings could use that real time nature of social media. We can the real time feedback that we can get from perceptions of how people will perceive it, how people take photographs or of a building. We can use that data actually to make better buildings in a way. Because before you had to do polls, you had to do surveys, you had to do post-occupancy studies. Now you could do a full visual post-occupancy, even with videos, just by simply looking up your building online. So it's both. There's both a negative and a positive. So it's really just how we use it.
yeah, just to jump on that, I think, basically it's a tool, right? It's just a tool, and after it's up to us to define what is the best way to use it. And, of course, there's some advantages and disadvantages. And yes, it's how we'll be able to move forward is, like right now, we're really happy to have social media to be able to communicate with people that are not next to us. And, this is really something that we need to think about also in our design. So, yeah, I agree with you, Aris.
So, so no longer is, we no longer live in a world of architecture where it only resides on a site. It also our building lives on in the virtual world, sometimes preserved in a certain state. People have this conception that when we see photographs of buildings, let's say you have this lush vegetation, and then when you go to the site, you see, where's the lush vegetation? It's all gone because it's, it was taken in a time when there was lush vegetation. And sometimes people expect, why are there electric wires above the building? And you don't see it in social media because they don't take photographs of it. And sometimes our clients say, why do you render the electric post? Why do you keep because I told them, because it's there. I just tell the clients, think of the electric post as an artwork, or spaghetti on post. Yeah. So it's social media really does have this big effect on how we practice. But I think it's also a good way, because during this past pandemic, we've been discussing a lot about how we would leverage social media in a way that it's more productive. We don't have the answer yet, but because information is practically now everywhere, and everything that we do is a data point. So potentially buildings are data points in a certain way, but one way. So they are data points from one direction. They're data points from, let's say, just a location. But it could be that the other way around. Buildings might be able to generate in the future, might be able to generate that information the other way around, or both ways. So because we have that real-time data, and buildings, you just imagine a building that could adjust itself based on the data that it's getting from the occupants themselves. So I don't know. It could be the next thing in building smarter buildings. A building that, based on social information or the data points that it gets from its occupants, it adjusts itself in real time. So that could be a use for that social media. But of course, surveillance it's a different matter. That could be an issue. Yeah.
To add on, actually, right now we are using social media to celebrate architecture online, right?
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah, we're in Facebook.
Thank you, Jeffrey. A very good point.
Hi.
Maybe the question is, what is the framework that the social media creates for that communication to happen? What are the algorithms? Who are actually setting these algorithms? Who's deciding the premises of the conversation? Who decides who get access to what? Because I think those things there's a fascination with social media and what it does manage to distribute, but it's also very hard to know, who is what distributed to, and who's receiving what, and who's being actually just polarized. And there's a lot of, there's a good and bad sides of the tool, but the premises of the tool is also somehow also decided by someone else. And I think that's maybe something that we need to kind of question with social media. But again, yeah, it's so nice to be able to. The other thing is that it got to be a two-way thing. I really like the format of this, for example, where we can say something and we can respond, and we have to stand up to what we say because there is a commitment to a conversation. Where social media in itself doesn't really have that commitment. Where you say something, you might get a response, but you can also ignore it.
But I guess, Alex, it's also good that, I'm butting in and there's an imperfection to how we're presenting this right now, right?
Yeah. Exactly. No, it's nice.
Jeffrey?
Jeff, come on.
Sorry, the line here is a bit bad. It's raining here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I was talking about right now we are using social media to celebrate architecture. Online Anthology this year, right? So actually, I agree with all of you. Actually, social media is just a tools for us to use. Someone might misuse it, and then it's always two-way. Yeah, I agree with that. But if we use it in a good way, let's say if we are doing a comedy project, people, for me in the psychology side, people tend to scared of changes or something new suddenly appear in front of them. But by using social media, actually we can get involved of them in the design process. Slowly they are feeling they are part of it. So whenever the building, the architecture is done, they will not feel afraid or so defensive against this architecture because they already deep inside their heart. So if you use social media in a good way, I think this is the one of the way we can use. If you got an architecture, we can just open a forum, everyone have a discussion. Do you like this or not? So no matter it's good or bad comment, and then we can change it. So I think this it become a platform for us to interact with all the user. So I think just up to us how do we use the tools. Yeah.
He makes a good point that social media can be used as a tool to engage the community. But I think at the end of the day, we shouldn't forget that architecture is more than visual, it's experiential. So that's what sets all our designs apart, right? So thanks everybody.
I think Alex was talking about one of the relevant points I was thinking was when Alex was mentioning who dictates what we see and hear. And I think so the platform is very vital. And maybe the algorithms or whatever, but I think architects, we need a bigger role in terms of how we showcase architecture outside of us architects. So I think that's something that we have to find ways of doing, how to reach out more.
Next question.
So I think
should we open the questions to our audience?
Yes.
Facebook audience.
Does anybody have questions? And feel free to comment
on our Facebook chat box.
Live chat box.
Yeah, any advice for the next generation of architects? Question here from Facebook.
I have an interesting question.
Kat, Christian, can you start? Advice for the next generation of architects.
Okay, for the next generation of architects, I think what our advice based on what we're doing now is don't be afraid to actually explore things that are not established, explore things that are not been done. And standards are just a set of rules to initially guide. And trial and error, embrace trial and error in the process, embrace
make mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing. That's one a mindset that we always invite to everyone that we work with. Mistakes are always okay. It's what you do after that makes a difference. If say you commit a mistake, improve it, and then for the next projects, those mistakes are actually already been solved. And eventually, developments will come with that process. It's actually developing more the mindset to create something new, which makes it the most important thing. Yeah.
Okay, I will just jump in with this one. Matt and I agree that for next gen architects, it's important that you continue your learning. So may it be in doing another degree or exploring new skills. So don't finish up just because you did your degree already, your bachelor's, or you got your license. There's always like life is all about learning. So it's generally that applies to even architecture. Like you have to continue to learn different things and explore what you want to do because architecture is quite a wide field. And even like speaking from my own experience, I started to diverge a few years ago to urban design, which I really enjoy now because I'm able to bring in my background in architecture to the city, like to the master plans that I do, or to all the different guidelines that we do for our cities and projects. So I think there is that. I think there's always just about the continuous learning as important as everything else, because that's where you start to learn what you want to do for the next few years from now. So yeah, Matthew.
Sure. I think the first thing I would tell the new generation, is to dream. Like you have to do better than whatever we did here. Like you have to learn from whatever we're doing at the moment, but still do better. The same way we learn from whatever the previous generations did, and so on. We just need to always be a step ahead. So you really have to dream big and see whatever can be done. There's always things that a lot of people will actually not see with the world around us, and you have to be the person that actually look at that and you care for that and bring what is actually needed everywhere. So I think this idea of really learning, but also dreaming big and go for it. And as Kat and Christian were saying, just try things, do things, and see whatever is possible. Start something. You can start small, but start to bring your ideas in, define what you want to do. And from there, just go on.
That's like a Miss Universe question, and for me, I think the younger generation should not repeat the same mistakes that we did, and I guess I agree with Matt on that. And they should learn from us, and not only learn from the good things that we do or the right things that we're doing, but we have to learn from the past and learn from the mistakes of the past. And I think it's better for the younger generation to question everything, that even the standards that we're doing, everything that we're doing now. I think we should they should question again. Is there a better way we can do things? Let's say questioning our current system. For example, let's say about the idea of even zoning, the idea of having zoning. We can question that. No law or no is unassailable, and I think the younger generation should have that, or else we'll just be repeating the same mistakes that we've made in the past.
We'll take a short message from everyone.
As our last thoughts, because we're wrapping up, and then maybe take a group photo with everyone.
So let's take a
screenshot. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. And last thoughts from anyone?
Alex.
Well, thank you so much for the discussion. I mean, I really, really enjoy this kind of back and forth, and hearing what you guys are doing, and I think it's really, really interesting. Also interesting to see that there is a lot of strands and discussions that we have in common also that should be discussed more. I mean, that's also an advice for young architects, to be part of discussing what you do with other practitioners, but also people outside your practice. That would be little.
And Antonius.
I would like to thank everyone right here, especially Anthology was amazing. I really like the background you had right there. The blue angle. It's great. Nice to meet you guys, and I would like to know more about you and your works. And I really like the idea. I guess Aris has taken everything I have to say. And actually, it's amazing. I guess we have to stop being dogmatic, right? In the profession, there is very dogmatic, such as an architect. I mean, you have to go many phases to do an internship, right? And then people keep telling you to do this, and then people they're authorized, some. I mean, they're not wrong. It's some licensed architect, and you're not. So sometimes you felt that actually they know better. Sometimes, we kept questioning ourselves, but then I would like to close with this. I guess we have to sometimes stop to use our common sense because what people thought was fact doesn't mean it has to be your right. I mean, it doesn't have to be your fact. And then if you think whatever you're doing is right, and maybe it is, And then I guess what next generation of architect really means to me is political architecture politically incorrect is okay, So you don't have to do what society wants you to do, like what Kat and Christian were doing was amazing. Like people were expecting, something from them, and they kept doing something else. And then I guess that's what make you guys all are awesome and different. And I would like to thank you for that.
Jeff, last words before saying goodbye again.
I would just give a few words to all the young architects. I think you guys should always ask three things: what, how, and why. Always question your architecture. Why is it doing this way? And then I agree with Matthew. You just dream, but you have to do action, not just dreaming and then do nothing. But you always have to do something so you can see the result. And then keep asking yourself why you're doing this. And then keep reimagining the stuff you do. Can it be the other way around? Or just try to create more opportunity. Things can be done. Yeah, in different way.
Christian and Kat, last message for our viewers.
Okay. This is really an eye opener. It's really thank you, Arvin, for this and WTA Anthology for this opportunity. It's really nice seeing all these people, actually familiar faces. Audrey, Matthew, Aris, we've met in Baguio. We're actually a really big fan of Aris before. So it's really nice seeing all these people, seeing all their works, and actually appreciating that we have this, and we actually have this process, and we can share this common passion and share our process to people. Thank you, Arvin, for this opportunity.
More time.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
See you next year. See you next year.
See you next year in Campus.